So, after about a 2-year hiatus of Apple not updating the iPad lineup at all, it looks like we will be getting updates to the iPad Air and the iPad Pro lineup come March of 2024, which is only a couple weeks away, and we got some new source information that really solidifies that we will be getting new and revamped iPads. So, without further ado, let's talk about everything that we know coming soon to the iPad lineup. So I don't want to go super in depth because we do have a few videos already explaining what to expect with the iPads, but I do want to talk about what we actually learned that really solidifies what we already knew about the iPad. But first, let's start with the iPad Air lineup itself. So the iPad Air currently, we have a M1 iPad Air in one size, which is 10.9, which is basically the same footprint as the 11-inch iPad Pro, just with some thicker bezels. This iPad works with the current 11-inch Magic Keyboard. It has one camera on the rear, similar to the 2018 iPad Pro. And overall, it is a great iPad, especially at the entry level, because it is $600, and it is the cheapest way to get extended monitor support as well as Stage Manager on any iPad. But that does come with only 64 gigs of base storage. But in this new iPad Air revamp, we do think we're going to be getting an M2 chip in there, but the big news is that we will be getting a new, larger iPad Air. Now, this larger iPad Air is basically going to be a 12.9-inch iPad Pro without the new OLED display and without ProMotion. So Apple is going back into their back pocket the same way that they did with the 15-inch MacBook Air, in the same way that they're doing with the 15 Plus on the iPhone side. Is people seem to not want to overspend on the actual hardware, and they just want bigger devices, right? The 15-inch MacBook Air is one of Apple's best-selling MacBooks, and it's because people wanted the simplicity and the cheapness, quote-unquote, of the MacBook Air from the 13-inch side, but they wanted a larger display and they didn't want to spend MacBook Pro money on a larger MacBook Air. So Apple, at $1,300, released the M2 MacBook Air at 15.3 inches or 15.4 inches, I believe. And that thing has sold like hotcakes. And then same thing goes with the 15 Plus. Yes, we all love the 12 mini and the 13 mini in theory, but Apple saw the numbers, they weren't selling enough the mini size, so they doubled down on the bigger one, and they went with a 6.7-inch iPhone Plus model, and now that one is one of Apple's best-selling iPhones. It's not the regular iPhone, it's iPhone Plus because it is a larger screen, it still only has 60 Hz, so they're not spending money on a better hardware, and you still have USB-C on the 15 Plus model, you get the 6.7 inches, it's still a great operating system, it's still more than powerful enough, and you do get one less camera, but for most people, it's more than enough, and they just wanted a larger screen size, and that is the best battery life of any iPhone. So that is why Apple is giving us a 12.9-inch iPad Air, and this is going to be very similar to the current iPad Air, and also it's going to look pretty identical to the 2018 iPad Pro. So it's going to have the same bezels all around. It's probably going to keep Touch ID, but you're only going to get a 60 Hz display on this actual model, but it will work most likely with the Magic Keyboard. And just to let you guys know, we did get actual dimensions of the new iPad Pro. So the new M2 iPad Air is actually going to go from 10.9 inches to 11 inches on the smaller side, and that is going to be 247.6 millimeters by 178.5 millimeters by 5.9 millimeters. So it's going to be basically the same exact thing as what we have right now, just with a little bit larger of a display. But then with a 12.9-inch model, it's going to be 280.6 millimeters by 214.9 millimeters and 6.0 millimeters in thickness. So this is going to be the same exact thing as the iPad Pro, and maybe even a little bit slimmer of the current iPad Pro, but it's still going to have just one camera bump. It's going to work with the Magic Keyboard, so it'll have the 3-pin connectors. It'll still work with the Apple Pencil 2, and it's just going to give people a cheaper alternative to get a larger iPad. Because not everybody needs that Thunderbolt port, not everybody needs ProMotion, not everybody needs, the more premium hardware that the iPad Pro has. They just want a larger display. So I think the 12.9-inch iPad Air is going to be Apple's best-selling iPad, and it's going to be the battery champ for any iPad as well. But then let's talk about the iPad Pro, because the iPad Pro is going to get a significant revamp from both a visual and an internal hardware standpoint. So firstly, we're still going to have two sizes, which is the smaller one, and that's probably going to remain at the 11-inch iPad Pro model, and the dimensions are going to be 249.7 millimeters by 177.5 millimeters by 5.1 millimeters. So it's going to be relatively thin, and it's going to be a great form factor for a lot of people. And it still remains yet to be seen if we're going to get a full OLED or if we're just going to keep the same 120 Hz ProMotion that the current 11-inch has, because similar to what Apple did with the current iPad Pro models, they still kept the ProMotion 120 Hz, but they didn't give the 11-inch iPad Pro mini LED the same way that they gave the 12.9-inch iPad Pro mini LED. And then the new iPad Pro is probably going to be a 13 or 13.1-inch iPad Pro. It's going to be the same actual footprint as a current iPad Pro with slimmer bezels, and it looks like it's going to be a lot slimmer in actual thickness as well, because Apple's removing the mini LED to save a lot more space and giving us an actual OLED display on here, which should be a great upgrade for display tech on the new iPad Pro. So we're looking at about 281.5 millimeters by 215 millimeters by 5 millimeters in thickness, which is ultra ultra slim. And I think Apple's doing this for two reasons. One, of course, like I mentioned, they're going from mini LED to OLED, and OLED is a much slimmer technology. But then secondly, I think Apple's Magic Keyboard is actually going to be a little bit thicker and a little bit heavier than the current Magic Keyboard. So Apple's going to be making a new, more MacBook Pro-like Magic Keyboard for the new iPad Pros. And I think it's going to have a few things like more pin connectors for data pass-through and things like that. But overall, Apple's hedging on the fact that the new iPad Pro Magic Keyboard is going to be a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker by making the iPad slimmer and lighter. So let's see exactly what Apple ends up doing with this exact lineup, but that is what we know about the iPad Pro. So expect kind of a nice little revamp from both a visual and internal standpoint. And then also on the iPad Air side, just a brand new size category for the iPad Air, which I think is going to be a big time seller. Now, from a price standpoint, I think Apple's going to keep the $600 price point for the iPad Air, the 11-inch version. But hopefully they give us 128 gigs as a starting baseline storage. Then we're probably going to go to maybe $800 on the 12.9 inch. And then they're probably going to put OLED on the 11-inch iPad Pro and give that to us maybe at $900 or even $1,000. And then the new 13-inch or 13.1-inch iPad Pro with OLED is probably going to start at around $1,200, maybe even $1,300 for the base model, which should come with 256 gigs of storage now at this point. But let me know in the comment down below what you think about this. Is this going to be enough to entice you to get a new one? Do you currently have an iPad Pro? I'm currently rocking the M1 iPad Pro, the baseline version. I do plan on updating it to the new M3 iPad Pro when it does release in March, so definitely subscribe to the channel if you're interested in some iPad content, because we all know that I love my iPad and my iPad is my main computer. But that is a new for this video, everybody. Just a little bit of news on what to expect in March with the iPad Pros and the iPad Airs. It's going to be a great time for iPads overall, in my opinion, and I'm just excited for something new in the iPad realm because it's been a little while. But that's going to do it for this video. If you made it to the end, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end. And if you guys want to watch some more iOS, macOS, iPadOS, VisionOS content, click on one of these right here. And until next time, I'm Fernando, and I'm out of here, everybody. Peace.